The episode begins by explaining a genius scientist. He was well respected and made significant contributions to humans. However, becoming obsessed with progression, he began to tinker with experiments that were deemed completely unethical. He switched from advanced civilization to trying to force human evolution. Furious, he decided to carry out his research regardless, even alone if he had to. It took a long time, but at the age of 70 years old he finally made a breakthrough on his research. He used this to reverse his aging, and restored his body to its youth. He then created an endless amount of clones and used them to create the House of Evolution, experimenting on animals and eventually humans. This story is then interrupted by Saitama's impatience, who then demands the gorilla to get to the point and stop trying to sound cool. The gorilla explains that the scientist is simply interested in Saitama's body, but Saitama responds, "Sorry, I'm not into dudes." Genos explains that it's likely for research and that if the doctor isn't stopped he'll try this again, recommending they attack him immediately. Saitama says let's go, there's a sale on tomorrow and I don't want to miss it. The doctor and his clones are perplexed that two of their greatest warriors were beaten so easily, and worried that all their research may amount to nothing. With no other options left, the doctor is forced to use his trump card, Carnage Kabuto, which terrifies the clones. He activates traps from floors 1 to 8, hoping that will deal with them before Carnage Kabuto is required. Running to the destination, Genos makes it clear that he doesn't have time for any of the traps that the doctor set. Saitama finds an unopenable metal hatch and obviously opens it with ease. In the basement, we see clones begging for their life while shooting an assault rifle at a monster, dealing 0 damage. Dr. Genus explains that Kabuto is locked down here because he cannot be controlled, but Kabuto is convinced that he is the new evolution of a superhuman and should be the one in control. Genus, however, recognizes his strength, but states that he's a failure and isn't remotely human at all. Making a deal with the monster, he says there's a specimen he simply must have, and only Kabuto can obtain him. Kabuto finds Saitama and Genos in a hallway, and pulverizes Genos on the way past them. Kabuto takes Saitama into a combat room and demands to throw down. Before they can start, they're interrupted by a fire cannon. Genos is back, and he's not happy with the disrespect. He may be landing many hits, but it's clear that he's not doing any damage to the creature. He takes a big hit, but demands that Saitama lets him continue. Genos uses his full power, but Kabuto simply blows it back at him, giving him a new hairstyle. Saitama gets his hopes up for a good fight. Walking towards Kabuto, menacingly, Kabuto blinks behind Saitama, who is wide open. Instead of attacking, however, Kabuto retreats as far as possible. Confused, Saitama asks what he's doing and Dr. Genus is equally as perplexed. Kabuto screams in fear and frustration, demanding to know how Saitama reached his level of strength. Saitama complies, explaining that no matter what, he stuck to this intense routine. 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, 100 squats, and a 10-kilometer run. Every single day. Never use heating, and never use the air con to strengthen your mind. In other words, train hard enough to the point where your hair falls out. To an astonished crowd, Genos shouts that Saitama is full of crap. Genos needs to become strong and demands to know his true secret. But Saitama insists that's really all he did. This excites Kabuto, who realizes that with that training he simply can't be stronger than him, and activates Carnage Mode. In Carnage Mode, he loses control of himself for an entire week, meaning he'll be rampaging until next Saturday. For some strange reason, this news seems to terrify Saitama. Saitama realizes he's made a horrible mistake. 1 whole week from today is Saturday. Which means today is Saturday too. So today must be
Bargain Day at the Supermarket!
Bargain Day at the supermarket. Saitama is devastated, realizing he's missed the best sales of the week. Genos informs him that if they hurry, they might still make it, so Saitama blasts through the wall and gets running as soon as possible. Dr. Genus has finished with evolution for the time being. Next episode, we're met with a man making inspiring commands. Why must we have to work for money? Why do we need money for food? It isn't fair. Work isn't fun and nobody should have to. Hammerhead and his followers will create a world where only those who want to work should work, and those who don't would be supported by the workers. Nobody in the public seems to care though. They head to the building owned by some rich business and immediately raze it to the ground. Celebrating their victory, one member realizes that it was actually the wrong building. Whoops. Hammerhead is a very forgiving man though, and simply moves on to the next one. We're then introduced to one of the strongest heroes in the entire series. Moomin Rider. He saves this kid's balloon from a devastating end, and cycles off into the distance towards the destroyed building. Saitama is woken up by a nightmare of someone demanding to play rock paper scissors with a booger on their finger. He then learns that these new paradisers all have shaved heads, and anybody who encounters someone with a shaven head should flee immediately. Saitama can't have this, and sets out immediately. Fortunately, Moomin Rider is here to save the day. Just give him a second. He rushes in alone and... maybe next time. Being recommended to flee by his advisor, the rich businessman states he can't since it would hurt his reputation. However, another voice is heard saying he won't need to flee with him around. Sonic explains he's still under contract and will deal with the terrorists. Asking if Sonic can really handle that many opponents, Sonic simply replies to find a way to deal with the pile of dead bodies he's about to make. Sonic meets them in the woods and honestly hits them with a pretty cold entrance. He gives them one chance to surrender, which is ignored. One by one, the heads start rolling onto the ground. Hammerhead raises the entire area. Meanwhile, Saitama, who's looking for the criminals, is being called a terrorist by the public. Hammerhead tries to deal with Sonic's speed by boxing in his path, but Sonic couldn't care less. While Hammerhead is celebrating his victory, he receives a kunai to the back of his head. Hammerhead's body, however, ends up disappearing. Hammerhead then explains his thick head kept him safe from the wound, before running into Saitama. Genos is being repaired by Dr. Casino, and is trying to explain how awesome Saitama is. The doctor explains he's developing Genos' new augmentations to potentially make him even stronger than Saitama. Hammerhead asks if Saitama is here to sign up with his group, but he explains he's just a hero for fun, and has to smash their heads in for personal reasons. Hammerhead doesn't take kindly to that, and is astonished at the lack of damage his punch does to Saitama. Saitama is simply let down by the battlesuits. Hammerhead goes full power mode and pulls out his killer move, Spin Attack, which reminds Saitama of the same move he used as a kid. After breaking the battlesuit, Saitama just tells him to get lost and the hairy cheeks vanish into the woods. Sonic meets Saitama and asks where Hammerhead went, before avoiding his attacks not once, but twice. After breaking his sword, Saitama tries to explain that he's not a paradiser, which Sonic refuses to believe. Saitama tries to explain that he's just a hero for fun, but Sonic interrupts him and says never heard of you, probably the most damage Saitama has received all season. But actually, Sonic didn't even care anymore. He's simply stoked that somebody has managed to block 2 of his attacks, and can't let that go unpunished. Saitama can tell that Sonic just wants to try out his new moves, made obvious by that innocent smile on Sonic's face. Sonic begins to move quicker than the speed of sound, stating Saitama can't even remotely keep up with him. While moving into attack, Saitama casually turns around and says, "Can I go home?" Sonic performs Windblade Kick and Saitama performs Checo Mato, not realizing that the momentum of Sonic's speed would actually push Sonic into his. Sonic tries to explain that he is Speed of Sound Sonic, and will put all his work on hold after meeting a formidable opponent to hone his skills and win the next fight before asking for Saitama's name. But Saitama is really struggling to take him seriously while he quivers in pain in front of him. Regardless, He spurs him on to train his hardest and heads home. Saitama informs Genos about Sonic and asks why Genos is still at his house. Genos explains he needs to be strong, but Saitama shouts to shut up, because he is currently struggling with something very serious. Genos can't believe Saitama has any struggles and demands to know what the issue is, to which Saitama explains that in his 3 years of being a hero and defeating monsters, still nobody knows who he is. Sonic's earlier comment left a nasty burn. He doesn't have any fans, and people in town today mistook him for a terrorist. Genos remembers that on the news, Saitama and Sonic weren't mentioned at all, and Moonman Rider rightly got the credit he deserved. Genos asks if Saitama is registered with the Hero Registry, to which Saitama didn't even realize existed. The website explains that if you're not registered with them and just defeating monsters on your own, you're simply some weirdo. Upon discovering that Genos isn't registering either, Saitama uses this opportunity to say they should both sign up, and will finally recognize Genos as his disciple if they do so. Genos excitedly agrees. Saitama fills out his form the very next day, and the episode concludes. This has been yours truly, King Cap Anime. Remember to subscribe for more quality recaps, and as always we'll see you in the next one.